on between what I would call the liberty forces and the deep state globalists, and we don't know who's going to win that fight. I mean, we know that for a time, the bad guys win. I mean, biblically, we know that. There's going to be 7 years of tribulation. So they are, this is an attempt. They've laid this out, and this is an attempt to move us into the New World Order.
All the shootings, all the gunshots. Well, they're probably shooting at houses that lasted for hours, all over the place. North Buffalo, West Side. I was surrounded by gunfire. He was shooting something. 9mm going off in the back here. Yeah, Antifa. Yeah, that's for George Soros.
America is never going to be the same. We've changed as a country. Don't doubt it. The world is not going to return to the way things were.
Before we start, I saw the video on the news with the lady in Rochester.
Okay.
She was getting beat up by, I would say, thugs. And I know a lot of radio hosts from different radio shows, they've gotten fired for saying that. A lot of them gotten taken down from social media. But I'm not afraid to be a voice for the people. I mean, they're not protesters. Let's call it like it is. Those are thugs with a bold capital letters underlying.
The people rioting are thugs.
Absolutely. Rioting are thugs, right. If you're looting, setting buildings on fire, and beating people up, that has nothing to do with protesting and trying to get your message across about George Floyd or anything else of that matter. This has to do with anarchy and its destruction, and it's hurting a lot of people. So I saw this lady getting beat up with a 2x4. And, I mean, I'm sure, everybody felt the same way. I mean, this anger rises up in you, right? And you're thinking, wow, what if that was me? What if that was my wife? I mean, you got to use, any means necessary to protect yourself and your family. So the husband comes running out of the store. He's got a golf club. He's saying, get away from my wife. And they end up taking him out. They beat him up. And then you flip over another station, another channel to another news broadcast, and you see down in Texas, they dragged some store owner came out, and he's trying to protect his store, and they end up taking him out too. They end up kicking him and beating him so bad his body looked like it was contorted and twisted, and blood's coming from his jaw. And Rob, listen, I don't know who's in control, and I don't know what's going on, but I know who's causing this and who's keeping the machine going. But it looks like to me that this is not a political war. It looks like we're in an all-out civil war. They're not going to say it. They don't want to alarm the people. But when you start to see where they're telling you you don't have no right to open up your restaurant or your business, and your kids are home crying, and they want food on the table. You're not allowed to support your family. You're not allowed to pay your bills. You shut up, you be quiet, and you sit in your home. And wear your mask, which is, quote unquote, a psychological muzzle. They're trying to put the muzzle on you so you can't. You're in public. You can't even see people smile. You can't even understand when they're communicating with their words. We're in 90-degree weather walking around like freaks. Social distancing. I like to get, within 2-3 feet of somebody, and I like to communicate. I'm a very communicative person, and I'm sure I'm speaking for everybody else out there. Today I'm going to be a voice for the people that we're sick and tired of it. We're not going to sit 20 feet from each other in church. We're not going to be wearing masks. We're not going to be listening to your fake reports on your vaccines and numbers of people dying, which we know that was inflated anyways to begin with. So they got the muzzles on our faces. They tell you to stay home. And meanwhile, They're releasing criminals, right? And felons out of prison. They're running the streets and they're hopping on the bandwagon. Okay, that's all they did is hijack this whole thing with this protest.
Okay, that's a good way to put it.
Right.
One point.
They saw an opportunity. They go, there it is. Just like they're opportunists. There it is. We're going to use that now. Oh, there's another opportunity. We're going to use this one too. So now what they do is they jump on that bandwagon, right? And they're just riding along with the rest of the crowd, and they're the ones that are causing the problems. They're causing the trouble. Now they're starting to shoot at the cops and stab the cops, and the cops are told to stand down. They can't, let alone, you can't even call a cop to help you if they break in your home or your business, and they can't even protect themselves. So either one or two things are going to happen. Either Trump's going to have to release the military out onto the streets of our cities, or, I mean, I see people taking matters in their own hands. I mean, they're going to have to go out there and take their country back by force.
Okay.
I mean, that's the only two ways I see it. I mean, I'm predicting this. How else do you see it? I mean, I'm making a prediction here. And because how much longer do you think the American people are going to take of this? You can't keep going in stores and you're going in Gucci stores and some of these stores down in Hollywood and stuff like that and all over the place. They're expensive. I mean, you're talking like expensive, like $500 purses and shoes and clothes and electronic items and computers, and they're just running the stores and just grabbing them.
They are purposely targeting the affluent areas now. This is something that's going on. Just yesterday, I guess there were 900 arrests in New York City, and yet de Blasio won't call in the National Guard. Just won't do it. I mean, the blue state and blue cities are just standing down. That was a good term. They're standing down and allowing this to happen.
So if they're standing down, they're allowing this to happen. What are you supposed to do that you can't get out and go to work and feed your family and pay for your bills, okay, and support your family? You can't go to church and worship God. You can't defend yourself because they say you can't defend yourself. You're supposed to lay down and take it. My question is today on the broadcast, how much more will the people take before the militia starts rising up and they start saying, well, listen, if the military can't do it and the National Guard can't do it and the politicians can't do it, we're going to take our country back. That's it. Go out into the streets and get it back. That I'm only seeing two things here. There's only two roads. I don't see a third road. There's only two pathways you can take. Either Trump's going to send out the military, and the country's going to be under martial law, and he's going to have to do it by force, or the people are going to do it. I mean, that's just the bottom line. I mean, come on, let's not kid ourselves here today on the broadcast. Let's lay it out on the table, and let's say what the people are actually thinking. I mean, I'm sure what I'm saying, this ain't nothing new to anybody. They're probably thinking the same thing. They're looking at this going, enough is enough. You have to understand, when I see injustice like that and I see people getting beat up and their place of business torched and broken windows and stealing, that's where my pet peeve is. I don't like injustice. So I'm sorry for ranting and raving. Go ahead, Rob.
I saw a very interesting video. Are you familiar with Candace Owens?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so in case anyone isn't, she is a conservative black woman, probably in her early 30s, very articulate, very, very articulate, and she came out with a rant very much on the lines of what your rant is, only from the black perspective, but the black conservative perspective, and it was eye-opening because she laid out a number of statistics that just I did not know this. I mean, I think so many of us here believe that this is a legitimate and good cause for peaceful protest. I was under that assumption, but it was not, but then it got hijacked. But now, from her perspective, the African-American perspective, and I think she used the word black, I think that she seemed to prefer that. I coined this phrase, that they were marching for a myth. Marching for a myth. She said, she made a few points. Number one is, why do we make heroes out of our criminals in the black communities? Yes. Okay. Why do we make heroes out of people that are criminals? And then she listed out George Floyd's record, just went right down the line with the crimes he committed, and mentioned that he was high and all this. And she said, "No one deserves to die that way," and amen to that. No one deserves to die that way. Nobody deserves to be taken advantage of like that. But he is not a hero, and I'm not going to make him a hero. That was, she kept on making that point over and over again. And then she talked about how every event here was playing into the stereotype. And those weren't the words that she used, but she said, why? She, for instance, the reason I said marching over a myth is this. She brought out the statistics that showed she called targeted racial action, violence against black people, the fact that it's systemic, she called that a myth, and she brought out statistics that showed that it was a myth. There were more policemen killed by black men last year, or 2018. I think that's when the statistics that she was using, that's when she trotted them out. There were more policemen killed by black men than white policemen who killed blacks. She talked about the higher rate of crime. She talked about the fact that if you are white, you are more likely to die in the hands of police during an event than if you are black. And she was just laying out the statistics and saying, this is wrong the way we are pursuing this, meaning her community. And she was referring to it as that, that the black community was making heroes out of people. So you have the march anyway, but the cause, no one should die that way. So even given that, we'll say, okay, the cause is legitimate, but like you said, Tony, it was hijacked, and there are instance after instance where they're showing where I'll call them provocateurs or agents would come into a demonstration, whip them up, leave rocks and bricks in places where the crowd could get them and begin their rampage. In one case, they were leaving flammable material, and I can't remember which city that was, and they found this stuff all over Minneapolis, Baltimore, Kansas City, pre-positioned rocks and bricks, and then that's where the provocateurs would go and get people into a frenzy, and then they would slip out of the crowd. They've tied these people into Antifa. They said they have evidence of Antifa leadership being on the place there, but it gets worse than that. So now that ties in George Soros, because so many of his organizations are supportive of Antifa. But then in Skywatch News, which is usually a very, very solid source here, they pointed out that Obama began an organization after he left office, Organizing for Action. That was it. I was trying to think of the name of it here. And he's got an army of 30,000 plus agitators, community organizers, if you will. And they are involved in whipping this thing up, trying to get people. It's like beginning a racial war. They're trying to push the racial thing. They're trying to push rich against poor. They're trying to put down anyone. Well,
a nation divided can't stand. That's just the bottom line.
Exactly.
Rob, you've been an expert in this field for years, and you brought us a lot of research, and some of the data you bring us and the intel is very good. The thing is, when somebody gets that information, you say to yourself, you don't sit there and say, well, thanks for the information, and I'll just put this on the back burner, okay? Years ago, they used to say, oh, they're just conspiracy theorists. They're nothing but, tinfoil hats. So now when we get this information, we say to ourselves, well, what can we do to make a change? We, the people, we make the change. Do you understand? The politicians, they work for us. We pay them, okay? So the question is, and it sounds like a broken record. When the people get this information and they realize now it's at their front door, what are they going to do about it? You can't wait on the politicians. Because like you said, the Democrats are just allowing it to happen. They don't care. They don't care if you get beat up by a 2x4, your house gets torched, your house gets robbed. You stand down. They're saying let the protesters get it out of their system. They're frustrated. It's their First Amendment. What about my First Amendment? What about all the amendments?
And that stuff just feeds itself. I mean, it's moving toward a revolution. And not in the sense of the American
towards
revolution.
Towards a revolution, Rob, we're in the revolution. It's now. That's it. You know?
This is like the first stirrings of the fall of the Bastille and the French Revolution. I mean, people are taking to the streets and doing stuff, and there are groups moving. And so far, the patriots, the liberty forces, have not gone violent, and I would pray to God that we would not go violent.
Well, I think they're waiting to see what Trump's going to do, and they're sitting back saying, okay, he's saying that if the governors can't get the National Guard out there to take their streets back and get things in law and order here, he's going to have to do it. And that's why I think they're sitting back. But I believe there's a threshold somewhere in the next few weeks, maybe the next coming months. If this continues, you're going to have people saying to themselves, well, listen, enough is enough.
Well, and you do have to defend yourself. I saw another video of a store owner in Rochester again, and someone must have recognized him. They show the video of a car arriving, and somebody in the crowd, while they're looting his store, is kind of narrating, and it goes, "Oh, that's the owner. That's the owner. I wonder what he's going to do." And the guy gets out of the car, parks the car, opens the back seat, pulls out a shotgun, and just starts firing. Now, it was probably rock salt because I didn't see anybody hit the ground, but boy, did they scatter. And people, are going to start defending themselves.
Right, and you see where this is going, because when it first started out, it was like, okay, well, let the people protest. I understand they're frustrated. When I saw that video, too, of George Floyd being murdered, and that's just what it was. It was straight out first-degree murder.
Yeah, it was horrible.
I'm going to call it like I see it. I mean, in all four cops, okay, that should have been first-degree murder. When you look at that, you say to yourself, you go, okay, well, you're allowed to protest. I mean, that's what our First Amendment's about. But then after we start getting into week 2 and week 3, and this thing starts escalating, then you start to say, like what you just said now, what's going on? Like now the guy's pulling stuff out of his trunk, and you can see where this is escalating into a civil war. I mean, so eventually somebody's got to step in, and I don't know if that's Trump or, somebody's got to step in and say, listen, now we got to bring law and order. Enough is enough. That's it. This is where it stops. I mean,
this whole scenario, starting with the virus, by the way, and we've seen many ways where this was predicted and mentioned that they were going to use the virus.
Exactly, and it looks like they're using vaccine. Yes, they're using waves of it. It looks like the first wave was the vaccine, get people not to work, get them used to sitting home. We'll support them in a socialist, communist manner.
Right, destroys the economy at the same time.
Destroy the economy, get home, put your masks on, put your muzzles on, and shut up. You're not going to church. You're not worshiping God. Now they're causing a civil uprising, okay, in our society, where now buildings are getting destroyed. I mean, that's going to take years to put that stuff back in order again. You know what I'm saying? And clean up that mess. And let alone the economy. What's coming in the third stage? What's coming in the fourth stage? Now, I did get some intel on what's coming next on the third and fourth stage. I got to have that checked out because that stuff was given to me. And later on, we'll talk off air because I need you to do
on that, because I want to check that out, because I have some thoughts on that myself.
Okay.
on where things are heading. So.
Fair enough. But Rob, if somebody broke into your home, a burglar, most people would, they would take care of business right there, but 99% of the people now today, they just pick up 911. I hear a noise downstairs. Somebody's in my shed. They're in my garage. Can you send a cop? Cop comes out. He takes care of business. But what happens if he didn't come out? Well, you have a choice to make. Either you can abandon your house and just let them do what they need to do, or you can end up getting hurt in the process, or you have to take matters in your own hands. So this is where we're at right now. It's not in just one little geographical area like a downtown, maybe in a couple blocks, and they're protesting. It's going now into neighborhoods and residential areas, and people are living in fear. They got their doors barricaded, their windows boarded up.
And that's why gun sales have rocketed in the last several weeks, in the last several months.
This is not how America is supposed to be. I mean, Rob, and I mean, you may be just a slight little older than me, but do you remember the riots in the 60s?
Absolutely.
Because I was a baby at the time. My mom told me about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I lived in an area that was adjacent to the rioting area, and I knew where the police line was. Even though I was a kid, I remember my parents talking about it and saying, yeah, they put the police line here, and I was thinking, oh, that's not far. I hope
my
that line
mother
holds.
and father, my parents told me the same thing too. They gave me a little history on it, and you're a kid, you can't believe that actually went on in America. But the question is this worse than the riots of the 60s, the Civil War riots? I mean, the civil rights.
Civil disobedience stuff going on, you mean?
Yeah, the civil disobedience and the civil rights movement, and is that
well, the civil
worse?
rights movement was a necessary movement. It was kind of like, again, that was a movement that was hijacked by people. I mean, Martin Luther King wanted a peaceful move because he knew that was the only thing.
So you're saying that the communists were even behind that back then?
There were people who were trying to agitate, yes. And then if you kind of blend this in with the Vietnam War riots, I mean, you had the Weather Underground, who, we're talking about people who are connected to President Obama, that later on served as his models and helped him in his early political career. We're talking about the Weather Underground planning the complete destruction of America, and they did some bombing at the Pentagon and some other places, and some federal buildings, or maybe it wasn't the Pentagon, but several places, and they did some bombing, but they had plans. They had plans to exterminate, put millions of Americans in camps and exterminate. I think it was up to a third of them, it was a crazy, crazy thing.
So this is nothing new under the sun. I mean, this has been going on.
It's not new. It's probably been bequeathed from the same people. So
now I understand why when Trump got in office, he says, I'm cleaning out the deep state. I'm draining the swamp. That is the swamp. I think you were with me that time we had that phone interview where we were having a conference with Dave Hodges, and he said that the communists have been walking the halls of the Pentagon and our justice system and our educational system, and they infiltrated into Hollywood. This has been going on since the 60s. We're talking last 50, 60 years. It's
right,
time.
That is the deep state.
That is the deep state, right.
Yeah, they want to build a one-world government. I mean, and they've been relatively open about saying this, some of them.
So the communists infiltrated into our country. They're breaking down the inner fabric of the United States.
At the highest level.
At the highest level.
It's not all of them. In each agency, the way I see it, each agency has a war going on within that agency.
Well, I think it's time to take the country back. I think it's time to clean up. Take care of business.
And I think Trump is finding that when he began to try to drain the swamp, that the swamp is bigger than he thought, and he ended up with some swamp creatures in his administration. He's trying to move them out as he goes, but it's sometimes you don't recognize what side someone is on. I mean, because certainly the FBI betrayed him very badly with the whole General Flynn thing.
Well, just about every alphabet agency out there has.
We need to be more active. We need to take steps. Churches need to open. Churches need to recognize and act on their First Amendment right to hold church. They just need to do that. And
there was a news press. I was reading your newsletter, and I just want to let everybody know to go to ATP Ministry. That's atpministry.com, and sign up for Rob Palazewski's Zoos News Review. It's easy to remember. ATP stands for Absolute Truth and Prophecy. And it's a newsletter that Rob puts out. So everything that we're talking about on the show, it's in this newsletter, and it's really detailed. I mean, this is better than getting the best newspaper out there that, it's better than any kind of news source. Again, I'm going to give you that address. The URL is ATP. That's Absolute Truth and Prophecy. That's atpministry.com. And you get on Rob's his newsletter, and you fill out the information. What do they do, Rob? They send in information. You get that, and you send them. What is it? Once a month or whatever? Once a week? They get a newsletter.
Once a week comes
out
usually on Sundays.
On Sundays, and Rob will send you the news, the Zoo's news review. So if you got a pen and paper, just mark that down. And I was just going to say that, Rob, before you started talking about the churches opening up, because as you were talking about the churches opening up, I was reading it was a couple paragraphs down about the Old Time Baptist Church in Hamburg. It was the pastors there. I was there for that news conference. Channel 4 News was there, and I guess there was a senator, congressman, somebody else was there too,
and assemblyman.
That's what it was. Yes, and yeah. I remember
a champion, by the way, for conservative and Christian causes. A great guy.
Right, exactly. So I'm listening to the first guy that got up and talked, and what was his name? Because it wasn't Lewis. There was somebody else before him, and I'll think of it in a couple minutes here.
Guadano was his last name, or something like that.
I think it was. Yeah. So anyway, he said that we're opening up the church. We're not. We know what's going on. We see that they're inflating the numbers, and our church is opening up. And they, somebody raised their hand. They said, well, there was 75 other people. There's 75, representing 75 different churches. And he says, everybody that's present here, are they opening up their ministries as well? He goes, well, I can't speak for everybody. He goes, but but if they're here, you can assume they're opening up. And he goes, but I don't know, what precautions they're going to take. If they're, everybody's going to do it differently. Like maybe put their chairs 6 feet apart from each other, clean their hands, so forth. And I still think that's a bunch of mumbo jumbo anyways. So then a second guy raised his hand. He says, well, if everybody starts attending, are they going to have to put down their name and address and their information? You send that to the government. And everybody started yelling and shouting, no. So he goes, no, we're definitely not doing that. Okay. It's against our rights.
Right. Even though that was in the guidelines of the governor, they actually, we got some information to our church that they sent down the guidelines. You can only have 10 people, and they have to pre-register, and you have to send their names. I'm like that.
No, that's not going to be happening. So I got news for the governor. Yeah, he can take his guidelines and he can paste them on his wall for wallpaper, because that doesn't hold no water with us. And then then I think I raised my hand, and then I had a question, because they only took 3 questions. And I told them, I says, listen, they're talking about a second wave coming in the fall. So you guys are opening up. Do you intend on closing again after what you learned from the first closing? He said, no, we're definitely not closing. I think Trump made that same point too. He says, if there's a second wave, the economy's not closing. And as soon as he said that, that's when these riots started breaking out. So I remember he also said too during his speech, because I think each one did a 3-minute speech. He says, listen, we have our Constitution and our and the amendments here, and the Second Amendment backs up the first one. I couldn't believe he said that. I was like sitting back.
Yeah,
going, wow.
I heard that comment too, but that is the point of the Second Amendment, and people, it's not about deer hunting.
No,
it's it's not about target shooting.
But
it's not even about protecting your home.
What these blue states want to do, and you're talking about these Democratic governors, and for the most part, some Republican governors might, they're part of some, like you said, it's not just all of them, but some of them are part of the deep state. They just want to chip away at it so you don't notice it, and they put the fear in the people. There's a virus out there. Everybody's going to die. Get in your homes and, wash your hands and social distance. They made a brand out of this. It's like the happening thing. You're driving down they got billboards up, they got T-shirts, they're making commercials, and you got basketball and football stars going, don't worry, man, we're going to get through this. We're going to get through this.
And what's interesting is that is accomplishing another thing for them. They are absolutely dividing the people, because there's a large group of very fearful people, and they might even be larger. But I'm starting to observe in the interactions I'm having, more and more people are going, this is malarkey, this is garbage. we're not abiding by this part of it. We're not abiding by that part of it. And I'm seeing more people realize what this is, and it's a real virus, and it can be dangerous. And if you have a compromised immune system, please take precautions. I'm not putting that down, but even some of their precautions have been argued against by the medical community for years. I mean, I don't know if I published it in this newsletter or said it on one of my other radio shows.
I think it was the one before that.
They're talking about they pushed out there and said, here's the statistics. This was from like 2006 that quarantining a large number of people never works. And this was from Harvard or Princeton or MIT. It was from they did a study. A lot of doctors signed on to this, and it was like, and actually it was published by the World Health Organization, believe it or not. And then there's the other question of masking, wearing those masks over and over again. Members of the medical community have said the masks cause more harm than good. Even Dr. Fauci had something to say along those lines. That kind of mocking the idea of wearing a mask. It'll make people feel better, but it's not going to stop anything.
Well, Rob, I have the newsletter, your newsletter, the latest one, and it's right in front of me right now. It was a 2-page, and it's on the second page. It says, "How bad is COVID?" So that's why I encourage the people. If you want this information, you need to go to atpministry.com. It's the only way you're going to get the information. Okay, you can listen to the podcast. The podcast is only going to give you, our commentary, our input, and you're going to get, you're going to get the headlines. You're not going to get the details. And Rob, tell them about the book that's coming out. You have a book that's getting ready to be released.
Yeah, we're working on finishing up a book, but these events have changed the goalposts a couple of times, pushed them out. But it's called The History of the Future, or something to that effect. I'm not sure the exact title. That's the working title right now, and that ties in all the prophetic threads going right back to biblical times, and then looking at the news and our history that maybe going back a few hundred years, and following our history right through the present day, how that is fulfilling biblical prophecy and setting us up for the fulfillment of the final last days prophecies.
Well, I read your first draft of History of the Future, the first draft of that novel, and let me tell you something. It had information in there. I've seen a lot of prophetic books, and I've seen a lot of, stuff on current events and what's taking place, but nothing to that extent. I mean, that is really, it's the meat and potatoes of what's going on. I mean, it's just detailed. It's worth buying the book. And you can get that on Amazon. So you just have to, and you just, when you go to
not
ATP,
just yet. I mean,
not just yet, right? But when you go to ATP, you go to atpministry.com, you'll see the details. Now, is that website, is that current, or what's going on?
What do you mean, is it current?
Is that did you have another website, or that's just it?
That's it for right now.
Okay, we may be coming up with a second one, but we don't know for sure yet. We'll let everybody know. But I like what you said. Just listen, we need to open up the churches. We need to get back, which they did. They did last Sunday, but not only open up the churches.
Tony, there were a lot of churches that didn't close. They just
they
did
didn't.
it quietly under the radar.
Hey, listen, hats off to them. I mean, they took a stand. That's it. So, but I will say this, and I'll go to this extent. Listen, people need to open up their businesses. That's it. Yep. Just do it. They can't arrest everybody. They can't even control right now riots, right? So they can't. They're already tied up with that. Just go open up your business. Go back to work. Take the mask off. Support your family. Put food on the table. Go to church. Worship God. Okay, that's it. Enough is enough. This is done. This is finished. What's more to? What are you going to do? Sit around, talk about this? That we're at stage 2. We're getting ready to go to stage 3. Oh no! Somebody coughed. They had a sneeze. I think it's the common cold. Wait till flu season comes. Everything's going under COVID-19 or coronavirus.
Right, and that's the whole thing.
And then they're going to put you back in your home. So it's like dogs. You let the dogs out to the bathroom, and then it's like, okay, everybody back in your homes again. Listen, we're not dogs, okay? And we're not going to wear a muzzle. We're not wearing your masks anymore. Get back to church, folks, and get back to work.
All right, I think we've covered it.